So welcome everyone to this part 2 video about leverage points. I will introduce and explain with examples the next and final 6 leverage points or places to intervene in a system. The material in this book is from a well-known systems thinking researcher called Donella Meadows, and her essay called Leverage Points, Places to Intervene in a System, which was published in 1999. If you haven't done so already, feel free to pause this video and have a listen to part 1, which I published on YouTube a few days ago before diving into this second part. So to recap quickly from the last video, what are leverage points? They are small shifts that you can make in one thing that can produce big changes in a system. But these could be negative or they could be positive, depending on which direction one take. So you could see, because of that, we could end up taking the wrong direction if we're not understanding the systems, or if we decide to, go with something different altogether without understanding what is happening. As explained in the previous video, Meadows introduced 12 leverage points, places to intervene in a system, in increasing order of their effectiveness, that is from the least effective or influential, number 12, to the most effective or influential, which is number 1. And in this part 2 video, I will go through the next 6 leverage points. So number 6 on Meadows' list of leverage points is about the structure of information flows. This leverage point is not about having to adjust a number or a parameter or having to strengthen or weaken an existing loop, as some of the ones we discussed in part 1 video. This leverage point is about a new feedback loop that delivers information to a place where it wasn't going before, and as a result, making people behave differently. So let's demonstrate this point using one of the examples that Meadows talked about. In 1986, the US government instituted a toxic release inventory, which required every factory to release their hazardous air pollutants to report their emissions out in the public, and every year. But all of a sudden, this meant that overnight, every individual and community member or any community was now able to find out exactly what was coming out of the smokestacks in their towns and from the factories that they lived next door to. So they were able to see the pollutant levels there because the US government decided to report them. At the time of instituting those requirements, there was no law against emitting hazardous pollutants. No fines, no safe levels were determined either. However, here is what is interesting. By 1990, emissions dropped to 40%, and some continued to go down. But they think this drop in emissions was due to corporate shame. Some companies just wanted to get off that inventory list. So that is an interesting fact because of that information that was not available before the US government instituted factories and made them corporations and made them report their air pollution levels at that time. This example shows that missing feedback is one area that can cause system malfunction. So adding or restoring information can be a powerful intervention and can be much cheaper and easier than rebuilding physical infrastructure. I liked what Donella Meadows said about this leverage point, that we humans have a tendency to avoid accountability for our own actions and decisions. And that is why there are so many missing feedback loops. At the same time, this leverage point is popular with people, but unpopular with the powerful. They can be effective if we permit them to happen, and if we, the people, go around the powerful to make them happen anyway. So they could be very powerful. Now, at number 5 sits another influential leverage point to intervene in systems, and that relates to its rules. System rules define its scope, its boundaries, its degrees of freedom. Examples are straightforward. Contracts should be honored. The prime minister of a country serves for 5 years max. If you steal, you go to prison. Rules are powerful, but they could also be weak or weakened through laws, punishments, or lack of incentives, informal social agreements, double standards, delays, and other ways. The power of rules can be demonstrated using interesting examples, like imagine if students can grade teachers in general. Imagine promotions and titles are awarded to professors based on their ability to solve real-world problems or issues instead of academic papers, or how many students they pass through the university system, whether they are good or bad. These examples demonstrate the power of rules and what they could achieve if we think about them or do them completely differently. This is why the rules of a system are a high leverage point and at number 5 of Meadows' list. Power over the rules of a system is real power. That is why there are lobby groups and individuals when governments are writing laws and policies. To understand a malfunctioned system on a deeper level, you have to look into its rules and who has power over them. And on that note, Meadows explained how her own experience of learning about the new world trade system back in late 1990s when it was being established is an interesting example. So she sounded the alarm over the new world trade system. She thought that the system was designed by corporations and run by corporations and for their benefits. There were many red flags that she noted about its rules, feedback, and other areas that would destabilize its state. For example, the rules of this global trade system would exclude any feedback from any sector of society, that most of its meetings are closed, even to the press, and this means no information flow and no feedback is allowed. It forces nations to race to the bottom because of too many positive feedback loops by competing with each other to weaken environmental and social safeguards to attract investment and trade. And this global trade system gives advantage to the successful loops until they create huge accumulations of power and centralized planning systems that end up destroying themselves. So rules are really powerful. That's the gist of this leverage point. Next on the list is another influential leverage point considered utterly, really stunning if and when it happens in systems, which is self-organization. The ability of a system to add, change, and evolve itself by creating whole new structures and behaviors. In biological systems, this is called evolution, and in human groups, it is called social revolution. Our human immune system has the ability to create new responses to new insults that it has never experienced, which is really amazing if you think about it. So this leverage point is considered powerful and influential on Meadows' list because it demonstrates that there are clever rules that govern how, where, and what the system can add onto or subtract from itself under which conditions. The system's ability to self-organize shows system resilience because a system that can evolve can ultimately survive almost any change by changing itself. Take another example, which is the genetic code within the DNA that we have, which is the basis of all biological evolution. It contains only 4 different letters combined into words of 3 letters each. This pattern and the rules for replicating and rearranging it has been as it is for billions of years. During this time, it gave rise to so many variety of failed and successful species. So in self-organization, we are basically combining an evolutionary raw material and a way of experimentation, of selecting and testing new patterns. Take human cultures. These are considered our accumulated behavioral repertoires over hundreds of thousands of years. They are an existing stock out of which social evolution can happen, and insisting on a single culture ultimately eliminates learning and cuts back resilience. This is why any system that becomes hardened, that it cannot self-evolve, and which deliberately rejects experimentation and eliminates innovation is destined to fail over the long term, especially if we look at our highly diverse planet. Now, number 3 on the list is about the goal of a system itself, that is, of the entire system. It is a leverage point that is superior to the system's ability to self-organize, which was the previous leverage point. This leverage point is higher than single loop goals, like keeping the bath water at the right level, keeping room temperature comfortable, etc. The goal is to keep these systems as we desire requires settings or level adjustments, and we know how and where to intervene. However, what we are talking about here is a higher level leverage goals that are of an entire system rather than parts of a system. Whole system goals are not what you think. They can't be deduced from what anyone says, as from what the system does. Here we are talking about things like survival, like quality, like resilience. So they are really high level goals of an entire system. Why are goals so important and influential, yet hard to grasp by most people? They are because we don't recognize them that easily, despite their influence and despite their importance. So take corporations. They want to make profits, and they would argue that this is a known rule, a necessary condition to stay in the game. But what is the point of the game, as Meadows, rightly put it? These are goals of, cancer cells and every living person. It is bad when it is balanced by negative feedback loops. So the goal of keeping the market competitive has to surpass the goal of eliminating competitors. Meadows she saw that changing the players who share the same old goal as a low-level intervention. But there is an exception to this rule. When you have at the top a single player who has the power to change the system's goal. This one person could be good or bad and can push people and entire populations to a good cause or a bad place. This is very relevant, I think, to our politics and our times. And I will leave it to all of you, to think about how this intervention relate to who we elect and their power in changing system goals. Paying more attention to the way politicians speak is key here, because it shows their direction and ultimately their intentions of how they want to do with existing systems, whether economic, cultural, social, etc. We are now getting to the 2 most influential leverage points on Meadows' list. So let's discuss number 2, which is the mindset or the paradigm out of which a system emerges, and explain why it is so critical. So paradigms are sources of systems because from them, from our views about the nature of reality, come system goals, information flows, feedbacks, stocks, flows, and everything else that concerns systems. Take the example of ancient Egyptians who built the pyramids because they believed in the afterlife. Copernicus and Kepler showed the Earth was not the center of the universe. These examples show that people who intervened in systems at the mindset or at the paradigm level have hit a very influential leverage point because it totally transforms systems. That's the whole point of this leverage point. That's why it is very important. Because we are transforming systems in here, this leverage point or intervention may look hard to do than anything else about a system. However, there is nothing physical or expensive or, slow in the process of a mindset shift. With people, it could happen, in a millisecond. All it takes is a new way of seeing that clicks all of a sudden in your mind or in someone's mind. But challenging paradigms come at a cost in our societal response. And this could be in the form of, crucifixions, concentration camps, nuclear arsenals, as Meadows, put it. So how do we change paradigms? by simply pointing at the anomalies and failures in an old paradigm or system. So speak louder with confidence from the new paradigm to the places that are publicly visible and powerful. Don't waste time reacting, but work with active agents and with those sitting in the middle who are open-minded. And finally, the most influential and effective leverage point to intervene in systems is about the power to transcend paradigms. This intervention is really different from changing paradigms. It is about the ability that is you being able to stay unattached to a rigid paradigm or a mindset, to stay flexible, to be open, to realize that no mindset or paradigm is true. We have a limited view of a vast universe that is beyond our comprehension, so our worldview is hugely limited. And Meadows explained that this point is about letting go of not knowing and being enlightened. Clinging to certain paradigms can lead people pedal rapidly in the opposite direction, in the wrong direction. So, and being flexible, being able to be flexible about paradigms can empower people enormously. Because if you are not rigid with paradigms, then you are able to choose whatever that will help achieve your purpose. If you are struggling to get a purpose, then Meadows' advice is to listen and learn from others, being in the space and having a mastering over paradigms that you see people get off addictions, live in constant state of joy, bring down empires, find religions, get jailed or killed, and have impacts that are lifelong and lasting. And this is why paradigm change and the ability to transcend paradigms sits at number one as the most influential and effective intervention and leverage point on Meadows' list. So I hope this video gave you a really deep understanding. This second part of two-part video gave you a deeper understanding with examples and explanations about leverage points, places that we can intervene in a system based on Meadows' 12 list.